Welcome back to another episode of JRC TV. This week we are hanging out with two very, very cool guys, Dean Jackson, and he was talking about being a lifestyle entrepreneur and how he defined success in a whole different way. And it changed my whole perception of what business is all about and how to use business to amplify myself and my message to the world while giving me a great life too, not just dying while serving. Now, the second gentleman that we're also talking with here is a man that is someone that's inspired me in so many ways because he took his greatest strength and he built it in the hands-on way. He inspired a handful of my other friends who I avidly learn from. And he's been the person who's led the people that I'm always learning from. And so I've been ripple learning his effect. And I'm very excited to learn from him, just really simply, both of these guys, the learn it, live it, give it philosophy in their own life. What they had to learn to achieve and become the men they are today, how they currently live those lessons in their day-to-day life, and how they pay forward and really give it to the world around them. So that was a huge introduction, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves, give a little history, from Mr. Joe Polish and Mr. Dean Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Excited to be here.
So you want to go with, we'll save the best for last if we want to start with Dean. I'm totally kidding. Go ahead, Dean. Why don't you go and then I'll go.
So, Dean, if you would, just a little history. How did you get started? What were the main learning points in the beginning that really helped you understand where you are today and understand the knowledge, the information, the strategies, the tools that got you to where you are today?
Sure. So, my whole life has been just one series of vector changes. And every single transition in anybody's life comes from one new piece of information that clicks at just the right time that sends you in a different direction. If I go all the way back to in college and before I got into business, I was playing tennis. I was playing these tournaments. I met a guy who was in his early 40s at the time, and he used to be a tennis player. Got to 180 in the world, which is pretty high in terms of rankings, but you're living hand to mouth at the time. And he said that his big awareness came when he thought to himself, he had a knee injury, it wasn't career ending, but he took some time off, and he thought, you know what, my window for this is diminishing, and here I am, there's only 179 people in the world that are better than me at what I do, and I'm living hand to mouth. And he thought to himself at that point, I wonder what the 179th ranked businessman in the world is making. And those words at that right time, to me, at 21, were the right words at the right time that I immediately took action on that because I was having that same thought without being able to articulate it. So I immediately, went back to Toronto. I got my real estate license and started out as a realtor. So that started that career path for me. And as a realtor, I started out doing cold calls, which is how ultimately what I found was that it was like being on a hamster wheel. There was no leverage in it. I could get myself in state, I could make those calls, but then as soon as I stopped making the calls, it was done. So it was like a hamster wheel. And I started studying direct response. I was exposed to direct response marketing, and there was a great interview with Jay Abraham, and I met Michael Gerber, and I started really studying this whole thing, and I discovered that if I could apply direct response and put words on paper, words on a postcard that I could send out instead of me making cold calls and get people to respond to me, that was like a flywheel. So I remember the first day that I got responses on my very first business reply postcards that I sent out, and I just knew that I would never have to make another cold call again. So that vector right there was like this huge thing. So I dove into learning direct response and applying it to my real estate business and started living it. So if you take that learn it, live it, give it model, that's been the whole thing about my life. I started applying direct response to my real estate business, and then I started packaging up the things that I was learning in my business and licensing them to other real estate agents in other cities. And then I hooked up with a good friend who lives in Cardiff by the sea, right there by Encinitas, and we built a huge coaching organization around applying that model to the real estate industry. And then Joe and I, we've known each other for 16 or 17 years now, or maybe even more. And so we've started about 3 years ago a podcast, the I Love Marketing podcast, where we share all of those things that we've learned. When you hear Joe's story, you'll see it's a parallel path, but coming together with our own experiences of learning and living in our own businesses, a whole approach to business that now we're able to give to the world in our I Love Marketing podcast. So that's kind of the path that I took.
Very cool. And what were the initial results you saw in your business when you got that? I mean, you had people reaching out to you and people coming to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So right away, the first thing that I noticed was that I didn't have to make 3 hours of cold calls a day. That's the first win. When I got those first responses, I remember driving up to my office, and I would have to, I'd play these games and things to go through this process to get myself in state, and I was, prepared to make these calls, and I was committed to making 100 cold calls a day, and that took a certain amount of time to do it. So I would have these call times blocked off, and I would, set up the consequences and have that whole thing. So I was totally committed to it. But I remember the day that I got those first responses, I was pulling into my office, and you could see in the window Joanne at the reception desk, and she was waving something over her head. And when I walk in, she hands me this little bundle of these business reply postcards with a rubber band around them. And there were 11 that first day from the postcards. And I remember I could still get the feeling. It's like I'm looking at these cards, and it was people who had filled out their name and their address and their phone number because they wanted to get the book that I was offering on how to buy your first home. And so instead of making my cold calls that night, I went in and I started calling these people. And there were 11 there. I spoke to 6 of them that night. And the 6 that I talked to were all really great prospects. They knew who I was. They knew why I was calling. They remember they did want the book. They did want to buy a home. And I would have had to call all night for 2 nights to find 6 people who were that friendly and that motivated. So that was a life changer right away. That now it was the first leverage piece that I had. That now I could send out those postcards, and they were working while I was doing something else. I could do whatever, and those postcards were out working for me. And so that's been the key to really building a lifestyle business, is having something that can work while you're not working,
I love that. I love that. Very cool. And I'm curious to know, you said Joe and you had similar paths. And
Yeah.
I was speaking with Joe before we got started, but I know from his path, I'd love him to share it, how his path was parallel in a different industry, doing something a little bit different, but very parallel. I'd love to hear Joe's side here. Tell us a little bit about your learn it, live it, give it experience, and your history of where you started and how it kind of built you up and then veered you guys together. I'd love to know how that crossed paths.
Okay, yeah, well, like Dean said, yeah, it's very, very similar. The spooky thing about me and Dean is that who we read, what we learned from, what we were exposed to, the timing was so congruent. I mean, it's almost like right around the same period of time in the early 90s is when both of us first discovered direct response marketing. And let me define that too, because Dean talked a lot about a lot of stuff, so I won't repeat anything that he said. I'll just kind of go parallel with it, so it goes a little deeper for everyone watching and listening to this, so that they kind of understand it. I started off as a dead broke carpet cleaner, and when I say dead broke, I had a friend from high school that came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to start a carpet cleaning company together?" And I had about $1,500 saved up. That I had saved up from literally delivering newspapers as a kid, doing odd jobs, just various stuff working, when I was in high school and then in college. And I went to college for a couple years in New Mexico State, literally to get away from where I was living at the time, Arizona, where I moved back to Arizona. And I've spent most of my adult life in the Phoenix, Arizona area. But I literally went away to college for a couple years, not just to go to college, but to get away from the environment I was in because I'd become a drug addict. When I literally needed to just remove myself from the environment, and all of the relationships I had developed were really based around partying and really just trying to escape a very uncomfortable existence. Growing up, my mother died when I was 4, and my father never remarried. We would move every 2 years my entire childhood, and I didn't have any sort of upbringing where I could look at who was a role model. So if there was any role models that I have any recollection of, it was simply out of books, out of personal development tapes. So I've been a person who's very big on learning and consuming stuff. So going back, I had started this carpet cleaning company in 1990 with a friend, and I had no idea how to generate business. And quickly, I burned through all of the money that I had saved up to buy the initial chemicals and equipment, and here I was, having to go out and hunt in order to have something to eat. And so for about 2 years, I tried to figure out how to make this small carpet cleaning company work with no knowledge or skills based on how to build a business. And so I was trying to figure out what sort of business could I go into in order to make some money. And I'm going to tell you a real quick story, which was the most important conversation I ever had at a young age, where I had another friend I went to high school with that asked me to go jet ski. Now, at this point in my life, I don't hang out with anyone that I used to go to high school with. But back then, I had this friend say, hey, would you like to go jet skiing? And I had literally managed to put myself about $30,000 in debt in credit cards because, damn it, I wanted to make this business work. And I was paying money to do hard manual labor every day, like go out and clean carpets. And there are many ways that someone could go broke, but one of the stupidest ways to go broke is cleaning carpets 10, 12, 14 hours a day, sweating your butt off in Arizona heat in the middle of summer, cleaning carpets, and literally pay to do that. That was one of the dumbest ways to go broke that anyone could do, but I was literally doing that every day. I mean, I should have just sat at home and watched TV and like ate popcorn or something, but I just wanted to figure out how to make this business work. So this guy asked me if I want to go jet skiing, and if you've ever been in dire financial stress, you don't really think about entertainment that much. It's really hard to have fun when you have to have bills that need to be paid and you're trying to survive. Entertainment and luxury is very difficult when you have no discretionary, money to spend. And so, I said, no, I can't go jet skiing. I got so much work I have to do. He's like, well, my friend that owns the jet skis is a multi-million-dollar real estate investor, and you might want to hang out with him. And so that obviously is like, oh, great, a successful person. Maybe I could go. At that point in my life, I didn't have those relationships. And so, and I'm in my early 20s, and so basically, I go on this jet ski trip, and there was 2 jet skis, my friend Pat, this other guy who was the $1 million real estate investor, and then one of his friends. And I finally had an opportunity to sit down with this wealthy, successful guy on the tailgate of a pickup truck during this jet ski trip while my friend and the other guy's friend were on the jet skis. And I said to him, hey, I hear you do really well in business, and I have this small carpet cleaning company, and I'm trying to figure out what other industry I could go into so that I could, make more money, because the business I'm in, I don't really like it that much. It's very competitive, and so any suggestions or advice you would have? And he said, well, is there anyone in your business that's making good money in your industry? And I said, well, yeah, there's a couple of companies in the Phoenix, Arizona area, and they do really well, but they've been established for a while. They have a lot of employees. A lot of these companies do bait and switch. And he said, well, he goes, if there's other people that are in your business that are doing well and you're not, there's nothing wrong with the business you're in. There's something wrong with you. And I said, well, no, I've gotten certified. I've gotten trained. I don't do bait and switch. I care about my clients, but it's really hard. And I was just making up excuses as to why I wasn't successful. And then he said to me, he goes, look, young man, he goes, you're like most people. You think the grass is always greener on the other side, and what's going to happen, and I told him I had gotten certified, I've been doing this for a couple of years, and he said, what's going to happen if you want to go into another business or another industry is you're going to spend another 6 months, another year, another 2 years to learn the technical skills of another business so that you can go out and repeat the same bad business habits that have caused you to be a failure in this business. And now, obviously, that was not the motivational speech that I was looking for, nor the direction, but what it did do is he didn't give me any answers on how the heck to fix any of my problems, other than to identify that the reason I didn't know that things weren't working was the problem wasn't my competitors, the problem was me. I didn't know what I was doing. So what he said to me, he said, what you need to do is you need to learn fundamental business skills. You need to learn how to make a business work, because if you keep chasing opportunities but you don't know how to make those opportunities function and work, you're going to do this your whole life. And so he's like, learn some fundamental business rules. So I left that jet ski trip with a huge aha. You know that whole saying about when the student's ready, the teacher appears? I swear to God, I mean, there's so, as cliche as that is, there's so much truth about just simply being receptive to the message. I mean, Jarek, the stuff you're putting out, learn it, live it, give it. I mean, you can say that, and some people will, go right over their heads, and some people it just lands because they're kind of ready for it. And I don't know if that readiness, mostly comes out of inspiration. I think most of the time it comes out of desperation. I think someone really needs to be at a point where they just need to hear it. And so I was kind of at that point. And so I left that trip, and I thought to myself, I live in America. This is an incredibly great country. I'm lucky. I don't think I'm the brightest person on the planet. I certainly have, issues with self-esteem, self-worth. I have a lot of self-doubt. I'm a little neurotic and that sort of thing. But for the most part, my limbs work. I'm young. I'm driven. I just don't know what the hell I'm doing. And so I said, other people have figured out how to make this work that seem to not be any brighter than me. What the hell do they know that I don't know? And so I sort of had that perspective. And so Dean mentioned Michael Gerber. And so I read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And it talked about how to systemize and automate your business so you can run it like a franchise, as if you had multiple, companies that you would set up in different locations. How would it have to run? And it talks about the three types of, characteristics of an entrepreneur. There's the manager, the entrepreneur, and the technician. And all three of these people live inside the business owner. And so what I got out of that book, though, again, was not marketing strategy. It was this whole idea of how to replicate and systemize and automate things. And I thought back then, if there's any area that deserves the most focus on systemizing and automating it, it would be the one function of the business that brings in all the money, which is sales and marketing. And if you could systemize and replicate sales and marketing, what an enormous advantage you would have, because you can systemize, like I was in the carpet cleaning business, I could systemize how to wash a van, how to buy chemicals and equipment, how to do inventory, how to return phone calls, how to file invoices. Now, this was all before the internet. I want to point this out too, that me and Dean had to learn marketing before there were websites, before there were Google, before there was social media. People didn't go there. They went to Yellow Pages. They looked at Valpak and Money Mailer type coupons. They listened to radio or watched TV ads nationally or locally, door-to-door selling, telemarketing. I mean, there was no internet. So we learned psychology in a much different way, because marketing is what you say and who you say it to, and the internet and all the new things is just another delivery system. Because I learned through Gary Halbert, who I originally learned marketing from. I'll get to that in a moment because I'll jump around here. There's three things you need in order to sell something. You need a product or service, you need a sales pitch or marketing message, and you need a delivery system. And what I was focusing on is, I have a carpet cleaning company. How do I tell people about it? I didn't know anything about how to put the messaging down. And so when I read the E-Myth, I became receptive to, wow, how do I automate and systemize that? So then I had a friend give me a copy, totally by accident, of a newsletter written by a guy named Gary Halbert. And it was called the Gary Halbert Letter. And Gary was this wild, crazy, genius, erratic marketing. I mean, he truly was a genius, just this brilliant copywriter. And I read his first newsletter, and it was so captivating and so compelling to me about how he wrote, about how he focused on, you can have the greatest offer in the world, but if you offer it to people that can't afford to buy your services, you're just wasting your time. So focus your marketing efforts on people that actually are the right fit, that could actually hire you. He made this comment in the first newsletter I read, that the don't measure the value of information by the pound. You know, you can spend $10 on a 300-page book filled with fluff, or you can spend $1,000 on, you know, 10 pages of really useful, valuable information. And he would talk a lot about, you know, the value of sales copy. And he talked about you could have, you know, a $500,000 home that's the greatest deal on the planet, but if you're pitching it to someone that can only afford a $100,000 home, it doesn't matter how good your $500,000 home is. And so that was my first introduction to the first newsletter, and so I subscribed to it. And what's funny is the friend that gave me the newsletter, halfway through reading my first issue, I said to him, "Where do you get this?" He goes, "I subscribe to it." I go, "How do you do that?" He's like, "Well, I pay $197 a year." I go, "What do you get?" He goes, "I get a copy like that every month." And I was looking at this 8-page paper newsletter, and I said, "You pay $197 to get this once a month?" He's like, "Yeah." I got out a calculator, and I calculated it, and it ended up being $16.25 an issue. And I said, "You can get books for this." He goes, "Joe, you're the last person I thought would say this." He goes, "Keep reading it." 2 pages later is where Gary said in that newsletter, stupid people are people that value information by the pound, not by the quality of information. And he said, what do really smart people do? He goes, they're willing to read newsletters. They're willing to go to seminars. They're willing to hire the very best that they can get and seek out the best. And that shifted my mindset. So when I subscribed to the newsletter, I ended up getting a book called How to Make Maximum Money in Minimum Time, which is a compilation of Gary's greatest newsletters. And one of the first things I got out of it was can and clone yourself, where you can be, like Dean was saying, you could be the greatest salesperson in the world, but you're limited by the clock. But when you go out there, because you know, with a sales letter, with copy, with an ad, you can talk to 10 people without being there. 1,000 people, sometimes 1,000,000 people. I mean, look at the beauty of today. I mean, the stuff we're sharing right now, people would pay thousands to hear this stuff in the past. I mean, we're making this available to people for free just to be useful and build rapport. But so basically, when I heard can and clone yourself, he said one thing, that any problem in the world could be solved with the right sales letter. And I've heard that and have said that 1,000,000 times, but I took it seriously. And I said, what I need is I need a sales letter to communicate all of these things about my carpet cleaning company, which I have been very inadequate and very inept and not clear on how to do that. So I created my first consumer's guide to carpet cleaning, and I simply taught people how to choose a carpet cleaner using education-based marketing, and I taught them everything they needed to know on how to hire a carpet cleaner. And even if they never hired me, I still provided enormous value. So go to the Learn It, Live It, Give It. I literally started doing that in marketing. I started just teaching people. I learned that the reason when someone asks you how much do you charge, it's because they have no other criteria on how to make a buying decision. And so I gave them another criteria of how to choose hiring a carpet cleaner. I wrote Consumer's Guide to Carpet Cleaning. Read this guide and discover 7 questions to ask a carpet cleaner before you invite them into your home, because most people didn't know there were 7 questions. 6 costly misconceptions about carpet cleaning. Most people thought all there was to carpet cleaning was price. What are the misconceptions? I wrote Crawling Critters and Crud, a guide to the slime, grime, and livestock that's seeping, creeping, and galloping through your carpet, because it's clever copy. I wrote How to Avoid 4 Carpet Cleaning Ripoffs, because you know what? There are people that do bait and switch advertising. They will get into your home with a low price, and they'll try to use high-pressure selling to upsell you. I taught people how to avoid doing that. The importance of value and price, which method cleans best. I started sharing all that stuff, and so instead of using a flyer or a brochure that said what most advertising said, which is name, rank, serial number, I used direct response, which Dean talked about in the very beginning. So image advertising, brand building is really about getting your name out there. Direct response is about getting your name out there and getting a response back. It's everything that we do that creates response mechanisms. So I started applying this to my own carpet cleaning company, and oh my God, it actually worked. And me and Dean both say this. We learned that the difference between a $1 bill and a $100 bill is the message on the paper. You change the message on the paper, all of a sudden people respond differently. Instead of people calling me up saying how much you charge, they would call up and request a consumer awareness guide. Then I turned that consumer awareness guide into a 24-hour free recorded message, because some people wanted their carpets cleaned right away, and I didn't have enough time to send them via snail mail a consumer awareness guide. Remember, there was no internet back then. So what about people that needed instantaneous decisions? So I set up a 10-minute recording where people would call and listen to a 10-minute recording on how to choose a carpet cleaner. And so by the time they're done listening, if they were price shoppers, it would sift, sort, and screen all the price shoppers. But for people that really wanted quality work, they would call me up and say, when can you book the job? And I would never have to talk to them. So I invented a marketing methodology for my carpet cleaning company that worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never complained about a headache, always delivered an articulate pitch, and it was much more focused than I was if I had to do that stuff live. And people were more receptive to it when they were listening to it versus listening to a live person say the same thing because of the phone call fear. So it was very non-threatening. That was powerful direct response. I turned this small carpet cleaning company around. Within a 6-month period, I went from $2,300 a month gross to over $12,000 a month gross, and it transformed. Then I hired an employee, and I built a $125,000 a year one-truck operation, and along the way, I started just going, well, how do I teach this to other carpet cleaners? Because if this worked for me, it would probably work for other people. And within the first year of going out and training other carpet cleaners how to do that, I had literally sold over $250,000 worth of marketing courses. But beyond that, I started saving people's businesses. And fast forward today, over 7,000 companies all over the world in just the cleaning industry have bought my stuff. By the end of the late 90s, every major phone book in the U.S. had multiple copies of my ads in many different industries running free recorded messages, and the same goes with Dean Jackson. Dean has influenced, just thousands and thousands of people in the real estate industry using the same methodology, and then I started licensing my stuff to other industries, and then fast forward, started doing big conferences, giving away cars, consulting with famous people, putting together Nightingale Conant programs, and then today I have, Genius Network, which is literally one of the greatest discussion groups in the world for direct response marketers, and people pay $25,000 a year to be at my groups. And me and Dean started, like he said 3 years ago, I love marketing because we're like, there's so many people we're never going to be able to serve, but we really get a kick out of helping entrepreneurs. We both want to be heroes to entrepreneurs, and we really want to help because we see the value in these individuals. I mean, they're the life force of the economy as far as I'm concerned. And so me and Dean were having a great conversation, a little over 3 years ago on the phone. It was in December of 2000, and when was that? 2010, 2011? I can't remember. Yeah. But and I said, wouldn't it be great if the conversation we just had was recorded and other people listened to it? And Dean was already doing a podcast for the real estate industry, and so I got the name I Love Marketing. We thought it was a great name. I bought the URL, and we started a podcast. And what we said is, let's just share the best stuff we can with people for free, and let's freak people out. Let's just keep giving out great information until people start commenting, like, what's wrong with you guys? When are you going to try to monetize this and sell us something? And so people, if they go to iTunes and look at the original comments, people are posting comments saying, will you guys please just sell us something? I'll buy anything that you buy. You've given us so much value here. And we're like, this is awesome. And so now we have, hundreds of thousands of people that listen to our stuff, and we try to give as much as we can. And yeah, we both have things that we sell. Dean has breakthrough blueprints, and he does high-level groups, and he has a system that writes books for people in 90 minutes, and I have, my Genius Network group and, kits and courses and all that stuff. But for the most part, we just get a total kick out of bonding with many people and trying to not only teach them how to use more effective direct response, but how to quit being advertising victims, because the world of advertising and marketing is filled with scumbags, and it's filled with people that rip people off and sell them crap that doesn't work. And more than anything, we want to keep people from being advertising victims, and we have had so many valuable, awesome people that have helped guide us, and that's what we want to do too, because I mean, as far as I'm concerned, to be a giver, not a taker. Life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. So that's my long ramble there, and hopefully some of that was useful, but that's we're both converts of our own system. We never started this thinking we would teach this stuff to other people. We learned it because we needed to eat, we needed to survive, and we parlayed it into a coaching and training business, which is very similar to what you're doing, Jarek. So that's the deal. Very cool. I love that. And I mean, so many nuggets in there, from canning and cloning to any problem solved with the right sales letter, which I loved, because there's so many people out there, and it's fascinating because I run into this all the time. I have a lot of people who are young and trying to get into the coaching industry or trying to get into those industries, and my advice usually stems from what you said, which is, instead of trying to just coach something on a random seminar you attended, why don't you go apply everything you learned from that seminar
and live it in your life and go get your experience so you feel the results, and then share what worked for you, because it will be slightly different than the 10 steps you learned from that guy or the 3 steps you learned from this lady, only because it'll be your personal life experience. And I struggled with that in the beginning because I grew up around Dad and everything was kind of regurgitating what he said because that's all I knew. And I went out and got some life experience and went, wow, yes, those 7 steps make sense, but there's this other thing I did that really helped me, and I don't know if that's useful to someone else, but I'm going to share it and see what happens. And then lo and behold, there was someone else in the world who that one little magic step was everything for them. And I was like, wow, this is important. Mm-hmm. And so that live it concept of applying what it is you're learning and putting it to work in your own life and business, and what works, keep it, repeat it, can it, clone it, share it. And what doesn't work, slice it and then cut it out and say, hey, this doesn't work. I'm going to leave that one behind for now and maybe come back to it later because it might work somewhere else in your life. The other piece that I love that I think more people need to pay attention to is I do get from time to time some guys from Wall Street, some guys from the banking industry, and some guys who work really, really, really hard. And They are successful in their eyes, and they do very extremely well, and they make millions, and they're successful in their eyes. And what's interesting is I remember we were talking when we first got on the line here, and Dean, you were telling me your definition of success, which I loved, and I loved the fact that you guys were both talking about replicating, cloning, canning, repeating processes that work and getting systems that work when you don't have to be working, so that you can actually have a freaking life and go do something and travel and have fun and experience everything around you. I'd love for you guys to share a little bit of insights, and I'm sure you have probably your own different opinions on performance-based entrepreneurship versus lifestyle-based entrepreneurship, and if you see there's a strong blend that exists in there and how people can find it for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the key there, when I talk about the definition of success, I started out with, I know I'm being successful when. So it's when I know. It's my own personal definition. I'm not trying to impose it on somebody else. I'm not trying to say you need to be more like me or this is how you should be successful. I encourage people to define success on their own terms. And when I say the words, I know I'm being successful, it's not about something aspirational. It's not about I know I'll be successful later. When they're chasing something and constantly trying to drive themselves but never experiencing that success. I learned early on to kind of push the accelerator pedal and go up there and say, well, if I'm being successful, what's that going to look like? How will I know when I get there? So just by answering the question, I know I'm being successful when, people can answer that in any number of ways. So, my first couple are, I know I'm being successful when I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today? Or I know I'm being successful when my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs. And the third one, the one that's kind of like the pivotal thing, is that I know I'm being successful when I'm working on projects that excite me and I'm doing my very best work. Now, if I just kind of look at that statement right there, that is a statement that allows for perpetual growth. That statement can be just as true, is that I know I'm being successful when I'm working. It's not about when I don't have to work. I love to work. I love to be a contributor. I love to continue to grow that way. So when I'm working on projects, I like things that have kind of a beginning and a middle and an end. So I like to do things and set them up in a way that can be self-managing, that it's continuing to add value even when I'm not working on it later, and I'm doing my very best work. So I'm continually pushing myself to do better and better things. My best work now is better than my best work 10 years ago and 2 years ago. My best work is always still in front of me. So I'm doing them in a way where it's not like limiting in any way. They're all sort of things that are universally true. They were true 15 years ago when I created them, and they're going to be true 15 years from now, but I'll be experiencing them in a different way, you know?
Yep. I love that. And one of my favorite things you said out of that is, what am I going to do today? Having the choice to wake up and not say, oh, shit, I'm late for my meeting, or oh, shoot, I need to hurry up to this or get there for these pieces. It's saying, listen, I get to define life today on my terms and decide where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to feel and who's involved. And it's something that we're so avid about.
That's not for everybody. You know, you were talking about the financial guys. You were talking about, because they literally, there is a constraint in the market. The market's open Monday to Friday, 9:30 till 5. You know, they've got to be there and on and performing, and they love that, and that's okay. You know, when I told you earlier when I was sharing that with your dad, that we were playing golf, and we were talking about I know I'm being successful, and I said, the first one, I know I'm being successful, and I can wake up every day and say, what would I like to do today? And this was in January. He looked at me and said, dude, I don't have one of those days till March, because he has every day is completely optimized or, laid out for maximum performance, and that works for him. And it's okay. Everybody defines success for them.
And what's interesting is the struggle people have in that moment that I've seen so very closely, and it's a struggle I had for a time in my life, which is when you want the results of a performance entrepreneur, but you want to live like a lifestyle entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Meaning you want to have the choice to wake up and feel and do and experience life however you choose to that day, and do some yoga and meditate and hang out and be with the kids and do all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And you also want the billion-dollar day-to-day results. Yeah. And it's possible. Mm-hmm. But what happens is, my belief is, people kind of have to choose a path or the other for so long, and they're welcome to weave or go back from one to the other, but you can't live one way expecting the results of the other. Right. Same thing here is when you see a performance entrepreneur who they think the more I make, the more freedom it's going to give me, but they keep working like this their whole life, hoping that freedom's coming up next. But their whole life is designed to be performance, 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 performance. Mm-hmm. So it's really saying, my belief is there's three types of entrepreneurs, and a friend shared this with me. There's a lifestyle entrepreneur, which is about designing life on their terms and creating life the way they want, and their business is designed to give them the lifestyle they dream of. Two, there's a performance-based entrepreneur, and the performance-based entrepreneur is someone who is driven to find out what is humanly, physically possible every single day. They're going to maximize what their capabilities are, and they're always pushing for what's possible. And they're going to expand every ounce of who they are and what they have to get it. Finally, there's a failing entrepreneur. And a failing entrepreneur is one or the other who's wishing they were the other. It's a performance entrepreneur who's making millions, who's conquering earth, who's kicking ass, who's doing everything he wants, and all he does is dream about one day when he gets to lie on a beach and actually enjoy his life a little. Because he doesn't enjoy what he does. Like you said, if he enjoys it, awesome, stay there. If you don't enjoy it, though, you're failing. Same thing. It's the lifestyle entrepreneur who has this amazing life. They meditate, they do yoga, they're peaceful, they're balanced, they have their family time, they're so in love with their life, but every day they just dream and wish they had more money and bigger results. And that's the failing side, is you're not happy with what you have. Right. And when you can find a place to just love the side you're on, regardless of which route you're taking, it's amazing. When you fall in love with it, you can maximize it. You can have a lifestyle entrepreneurship and follow a lot of what you guys are sharing, which is amazing. You can and clone your systems. You can get it online, which I love a couple tips to wrap up with of what are some easy tactics someone could start off with of how to automate and how to animate some of the stuff online that can get them rolling in that way. Because back in the day, you either had to choose. I think nowadays, in my own personal opinion, it's possible to interlace these two thought processes based on the fact that the more you can automate and animate online and through systems and strategy, your systems can be performance-based entrepreneur every day for you, while your day-to-day life becomes a lifestyle entrepreneur and you get to enjoy it. And that's what, like, the amazing epiphany that's kind of happening is, back in the day it was this, and I believe nowadays it's starting to go like this a little. And you can still get these phenomenal day-to-day results because of these systems and because of these consistent cloning and replicating strategies. I would love to know both of your opinion. And Joe, I didn't mean to leave you out of that question. I do want to hear your opinion too, with the lifestyle and the performance-based piece. And I love a couple tips for people, just real specific tips of if they're trying to learn how to animate, how to automate, how to take something they've done, where does that start for someone who's never done it before, if they're a newbie?
Okay, well, what I'll do, I'll touch on the stuff there, and then I'll let Dean share some specific strategies so we can keep within a time frame. And yeah, I very much like the distinctions and things that you had explained. And I tend to think of myself more as an achievement entrepreneur versus a lifestyle entrepreneur, because there certainly are those. And so it's funny because, the different ways that we frame them. I wrote down your lifestyle, performance, and failing. And I have a friend, Dan Sullivan, who I do a podcast called 10X Talk with. And Dan has been my coach for 17 years. And he's in my group also. So we're both each other's coaches in different areas. And so Dan has coached very, more successful entrepreneurs than anyone that I've ever met. And, he talks about there's lifestyle, there's achievement, which would be another word for performance, and then there's survival, which would be another word for failing. With people that they just survive, they're always struggling though. And, if given the choice of productivity or peace, at this current evolvement in my life, which I can't say is maybe super evolved or enlightened, I would trade productivity for peace. Meaning I am willing to make that trade-off. I love Eckhart Tolle stuff. I've just never read an Eckhart Tolle book that is, I've gone and become a millionaire out of what I read in the book or anything like that. Although I love it, and I meditate twice a day. I do transcendental meditation every day. I exercise almost daily. I'm very much a big believer in eating extremely clean. I mean, if you don't take time out for your health now, you're going to take time out for it later. So I really believe my dear friend in a wheelchair, Dave Kekich, who's paralyzed from the chest down, says, life's easy when you live it the hard way and hard if you live it the easy way. So I'm a big believer in going out there and just doing more. Successful people are the ones that are willing to do the things that unsuccessful people are not willing to do. So I grasp all of that. And my friend Robin Robbins, she actually was interviewed at the end of one of my Genius Network events and was asked, who can become an entrepreneur? Can everyone become an entrepreneur? And she's like, well, everyone can become an entrepreneur. It's just most people don't have it in them to become an entrepreneur. So I think people are born batteries included or batteries not included, right? As Dan Sullivan would say. And so when it comes to, you made a really interesting distinction about, going from one mode to the next. And there's obsession-based people and there's mission-based people. And I'm always, like, Dean would strike me more as like a mission person. He definitely, I think Dean is he's a genius at marketing. He really is. He doesn't have anywhere near the neurotic behavior that I have, and I do a lot more stuff than Dean. It is less important. Dean is more focused on lifestyle than I am, although I think I have a pretty damn cool lifestyle because there are just certain things I want to get done. So I have different aspirations than Dean. Dean's definition of success is Dean's definition of success. My definition of success is my definition. I'm very obsessed about some things. Now, both of us will probably end up, doing pretty damn well, and for the most part have, but one lives a little more of a chaotic life than the other, but it really depends what you focus on, and like you're saying, Jarek, I mean, I treat all forms of other conversations, what you learn from other people. It's like your story about the guy sweeping in Uganda, where you can learn from anybody. I mean, some people's purpose in life is to serve as a bad example, and you can learn what not to do. So I treat a lot of this like a 12-step group. Take what you like and leave the rest. And most entrepreneurs start out because they want freedom from goals. They just want freedom from their parents, freedom from their past, freedom from this town, freedom from this identity. And what they do, though, is once they start becoming financially successful, they've got these habits of freedom from, and they still think they have to keep living and doing everything themselves, and they don't leverage themselves by hiring other people. And so we switch with success, financial success affords you freedom to goals and the ability to make that distinction, because at the end of the day, no matter how many hours someone puts in or what they work or how obsessed they are or how balanced they are, I think most entrepreneurs simply want freedom. And in this world, you need money in order to have freedom, because freedom can be bought in many ways, shapes, or forms. Medical care, better education, nice food, houses, luxuries, freedom to meditate. I mean, some people, they may not, that might be very hard for them because they're so, jammed into it. So anyway, I just think it's really important for people to determine who do you want to be a hero to and where do you want to put your passions. Because if you can at least identify that, then you can identify what is all of, because entrepreneurs, they're so misunderstood. They don't do this shit because they just want to make money. Now, certainly, money's an important part of it, and a lot of people are pursuing money, but most ethical people that I know that are really the true definition of an entrepreneur, which was coined by John Baptiste Say in 1804, that said an entrepreneur is an individual that takes resources from a lower level of productivity to a higher level of productivity. Whenever you're one of those people that are creating value, and money earned ethically is a byproduct of value creation, when you're doing that, there's a deep meaning. Read Man's Search for Meaning if you want to get a better perspective of, what an entrepreneur's drive is. There's a lot to be said, even though that book's about, Viktor Frankl in a concentration camp. It's about a human being's meaning. And a lot of that is expressed through business. A lot of that is expressed through our work. At the end of the day, I'll just wrap up with this. I try to focus on marketing that is automated. It allows me to have an ELF business, to do things that are easy, lucrative, and fun, versus a half business, which is hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. Because you could have a hard, annoying, lucrative, and frustrating business, but things are never easy in the beginning, but if you work it and you develop the skill and you develop the confidence, then you actually can have many things in your life that become ELF. And I like dealing with ELF projects, ELF people, ELF opportunities, and if they can't become ELF, then you have to learn how to say no, because your not to-do list is way more important than your to-do list. And the more that you understand yourself, the more you're going to build a business around that. So that's my ramble there. Dean, why don't you share some strategies on what people can actually do specifically to implement some strategy and make some damn money?
Well, I think the very first thing that people could do is really spend some time. It seems very simple, but spend some time defining what success means to them. And once they get that idea, once you understand what it is that is really what you're trying to accomplish, what you're about, even if you're an achievement or lifestyle entrepreneur, you'll know that by the way that you define success. And sometimes just having the ability to kind of look down in the future, I call it pushing the accelerator pedal, like just kind of taking that path you're on and seeing where it goes. And is it just going to be more of the same, or are you working as an achievement entrepreneur right now, but building something that's going to continue working after you step off? Are you building a flywheel, or are you spending your time on a hamster wheel where you're doing it, but then as soon as you step away, you haven't built anything of equity? A lot of people talk about having 20 years experience, but really they've had 1 year experience 20 years in a row. It's nothing built on it. And at the end of the 20 years, they retire and realize they haven't really built anything. So I think those two things, defining success for yourself and then taking the accelerator pedal, applying it to the path you're on and seeing, do those two things match up? Is this going to get me to my definition of success?
I love it. I very much love it. And thank you for both of you guys taking some time to share with us and to share some opinions and some examples and some different thoughts of how you guys came to where you are and to tell your Learn It, Live It, Give It story. I'd love to know from both of you, or it might be the same place, but if people are listening and they do want to learn more about you and tap into the I Love Marketing podcast and everything else you guys are doing, where do they go and how do they capture more about you and from you?
That's the best way. I mean, we've been doing that over 3 years now. We've got 152 episodes, 1 hour episodes that are all just killer content. We've had your dad as a guest, we've had Richard Branson, we've had all kinds of people that you could imagine, and that's a free resource. Every one of them is there. 153 episodes at ilovemarketing.com. We keep posting up new episodes every week. It's an environment where Joe and I get to share our evolution and give back, give to people, continue on.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I will just, we're going to have you on as a guest also, Jarek, because I want to go deeper with your whole story and share that with our listeners too, because part of what I do, I have a thing called Genius Network, and I like, you can network with a bunch of people. You can have a lot of Facebook fans. You can have a big social media following. But at the end of the day, I want to connect genius and wisdom because, knowledge is okay, but wisdom is critical. And I want to connect people with that because I think that's the most useful thing to help other people. And you talked about it earlier, and I know you talk about this in your trainings to people, is that one of the most effective ways to get better at something is to simply teach it to other people by living it. I mean, it's your whole premise, because you can read all day long, but if you don't go out and do something, I mean, if a guy wants to meet a woman, you can read every pickup book, go to every pickup course, do all that, but if you don't go out and ask someone to go to dinner or have coffee with you and just start the whole process of engaging with other human beings, I mean, good luck. Life is not a dress rehearsal. I mean, as much as it's cliche, you got to go out there and do it.
Well, thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for watching and tuning in to another episode of JRC TV. There was tons of tips and strategies and insights shared from both sides today. I'm going to do my best to type all those up and put them in a little summary that you can grab below our video here that we have on jrctv.com and get it on our blog as well, so you can just download it from there. I hope you have another amazing week, and I look forward to sharing more with you next week. Until then, see y'all later.